Welcome, friends, and let me tell you a story of heartbreak and redemption. Enjoy the story. Valerie Fontaine sat vigil by her husband Walter's hospital bed, her perfectly made-up face a mask hiding the anguish within. Just a month after their third wedding anniversary, her beloved Walter was wasting away from a mysterious illness that had him looking decades older than his 33 years. "Oh, Wally," she whispered, gently brushing back his thinning brown hair. "My one true love, the doctors here still can't figure out what's making you sicken like this. But I swear on everything holy, I won't stop until I find a cure and make you well again." Her mind drifted back to the day they met, 5 years earlier. She had been a high-powered workaholic CEO brought in as a patient, slowly killing herself through constant stress and neglect of her health. The young, brilliant Dr. Walter Miller had taken one look at her frazzled state and lit into her like a schoolgirl. "Miss Fontaine, do you have any idea how much damage you're doing to your body?" he had scolded her. "If you don't make serious lifestyle changes immediately, you'll be dead before you're 50. At first, Valerie had been offended by the arrogant, handsome young doctor's stern lecture. But his harsh words and obvious concern for her well-being had quickly melted the icy walls around her heart. Within months, their doctor-patient relationship blossomed into a scandalous May-December romance, despite the 10-year age gap with Valerie as the older woman. Her friends had warned her Walter was a conniving gold digger. Just after her vast personal fortune, he'd already been fired from 2 other clinics for reasons no one could discern. But Valerie had been blinded by love and married him anyway when she was 40 and he was just 30. She had cut off anyone who dared suggest her beloved Walter was a fraud. And now he was failing before her eyes in what should have been his prime, the life slowly draining out of him day by day. Every doctor in the prestigious Shady Palms hospital where Walter worked had examined him, but came up empty on a diagnosis or cure. A profound guilt overcame Valerie as she wondered if her own insecure jealousies and constant suspicions that Walter was being unfaithful had ultimately made him fall ill. "Please hang on, my darling," Valerie sobbed, clasping his bony hand. "I'll do whatever it takes to make your final wish come true, to be buried in that beautiful private cemetery we stumbled upon when my limo broke down. You always said it was the most blissfully serene place you'd ever been. I'll move heaven and earth to make it happen, my love. Just please, don't leave me." The next morning found Valerie wandering the pristine, lushly landscaped grounds of the exclusive Whispering Pines Memorial Gardens Cemetery. Only the wealthiest and most elite members of society were allowed to be interred here after passing an intense vetting process. She marveled at the ornate mausoleums, statues, and water features as she tried to map out the perfect final resting place for her Walter. As she turned a corner, she came across a young homeless girl who looked no older than 11 or 12. The dirty, stringy-haired waif was curled up against a mausoleum, shivering in ragged clothes despite the Florida heat. "Hey, you can't sleep here," Valerie barked in a tone much harsher than she intended. "The groundskeepers will chase you off if they see you trespassing." The girl looked up at her with sad, hollow eyes. "The grounds crew don't come in till the mornin', lady. I know 'cause I've been sleepin' here on and off for a couple months now." Valerie felt a pang of pity. This child's life must be unimaginably difficult if she had to seek refuge amongst the dead. "I'm Christine," the girl said, sticking out a tiny, grubby hand. "Valerie," she replied, shaking it gently. "You must be terribly hungry. I have some snacks in my car if you'd like some." Hope flickered in Christine's sunken eyes as she quickly nodded and followed Valerie to her sleek black Jaguar sedan. Pulling a bag of chips, granola bars, and an orange juice from the front seat, Valerie couldn't help but notice how the girl ravenously scarfed down every morsel in seconds. When was the last time this poor creature had eaten? "My folks, they make me come panhandle out here near the cemetery to get 'em drinking money," Christine said between mouthfuls, seeing the sad look in Valerie's eyes. "So they're addicts and neglecting you," Valerie stated more than asked, her heart breaking for this child. "That's no life for a young girl. You deserve so much better." Christine just shrugged, the very picture of hopelessness in one so young, and asked, "Why did you come here? Do you have someone here?" "No, not yet." "Not yet?" "Yes, my husband. He's in the hospital now. Apparently he's only got a little bit left. Valerie sobbed. He really wants to be buried here. I see. Is he a tough guy? No, he's just a doctor. He's a doctor and he can't cure himself? As you can see, it happens. What's he sick with? I don't know, neither does he. He's just fading away. Christine looked around shiftily before leaning in close to Valerie, lowering her voice to a whisper. My Gram always said when someone gets a weird wasting illness like that with no cure, it means a house spirit has attached itself to him, trying to smother him out. Valerie felt a bewildered laugh rise in her throat. A house spirit? This dirty waif believed in some sort of supernatural folktale? The only way to stop it, Graham said, is to get the spirit on camera as a ghostly mist or something. Then take the footage to a church to perform a ritual and banish it away from whoever it's latched onto. If you want to save your man, you better try it and see if anything shows up. Valerie opened her mouth to laugh off the ridiculous superstition. But then she closed it, really considering Christine's words. Walter was dying before her eyes with no medical explanation. Maybe, just maybe it was worth a shot, no matter how ludicrous this spirit idea sounded. Christine, you may be onto something, she finally said. In fact, I'm going to see about having a camera installed in Walter's room first thing tomorrow. If it catches anything abnormal on film, I'll know what to do next. Christine beamed at her in a surprisingly cynical way, looking 20 years older than her actual age. That's the smart play, lady. You do whatever it takes to beat this thing, you hear? I'll be pulling for you. Something told Valerie this tough-as-nails street urchin had just imparted legitimately wise advice, despite her ragged appearance and hardened manner. Thanks for the tip, Christine, Valerie said warmly before climbing into her car. I'll let you know if anything develops. Oh, and be sure to take shelter somewhere safe tonight. It's supposed to rain. As she drove off, Valerie couldn't shake the lost little girl's haunting words about vengeful spirits from her mind. She planned to have the camera installed first thing in the morning, just in case some kernel of truth lay behind that zany old wives' tale. The very next day, Valerie had convinced the hospital administration to allow a hidden camera to be installed in the corner of Walter's private room. Some couples wanted to capture the miracle of childbirth on film, she had reasoned. So why couldn't she do the same for her dying husband's potential final moments? Against their best judgment, the admin staff had relented and set up the pinhole camera. That night, Valerie sat alone in the vacant security room, staring at a blank screen as it awaited being activated by motion in Walter's room. She had been racked with guilt all day for stooping to such underhanded measures. Maybe because deep down, some part of her feared her handsome young husband had been unfaithful, and she needed to know for sure. Finally, right around 11 p.m., the screen flickered to life as it detected motion in Walter's room. Valerie's jaw dropped at the sight before her. There was Walter, looking perfectly healthy and energetic as he paced around the room speaking fervently into a cell phone. And then a beautiful young woman in a slinky red dress slipped in from the adjoining bathroom, flashing Walter a seductive smile before draping herself provocatively across his bed. "Who the hell is that?" Valerie hissed under her breath, feeling a pit of rage and betrayal burning in her stomach. The mystery woman laid back, hiking her dress up to reveal toned, tan thighs as Walter hungrily drank in the sight, his call seemingly forgotten. He clicked off the phone and pounced onto the bed, hungrily devouring the bimbo's lips with his own in a feverish kiss. "Oh, Wally, you silver-tongued devil," the woman purred in a breathy voice when they finally came up for air. "Tomorrow's the big day when your dried-up old battle axe of a wife signs everything over to you. Then we can finally blow this trap and split for our beachside paradise." Valerie felt her blood run cold at the strange woman's venomous words. Her worst fears were confirmed. Walter had been faking this entire illness in some sort of twisted scheme to inherit her fortune. "That's right, baby," Walter growled, trailing kisses down the woman's neck as his hands roamed greedily over her body. Old Valerie's fortune and her precious tech company, both mine for the taking. Once that dried-up prune signs her assets over, thinking it's her dearly departed husband's dying wish to get buried in that snobby cemetery, we're home free. "So it's all been an act?" the woman asked between breathy gasps of pleasure, as Walter's hands continued wandering. This whole deathbed routine? You better believe it, Marion, my love. Walter grinned wickedly. The idiot actually bought that I was withering away. Hook, line, and sinker. As soon as I get those signatures, your new boy toy husband is going to fake his own death. Then we'll skedaddle to our private beach villa and live like the king and queen we are on her dime. Valerie had seen and heard more than enough. She reached up with a trembling hand to tear the clip-on microphone from her blouse, cutting off the audio before she had to listen to any more of her husband's sordid betrayal plans. Hot tears of rage streamed down her face as she watched the love of her life ravage his latest fling, oblivious to the camera capturing his every move. She stormed out of the security room, knocking over a metal chair and startling the poor guard on duty. Her heart had been utterly shattered into pieces by the depth of Walter's deception. But an icy pall of determination was already setting in. If it was all-out war her bastard husband wanted to wage over her hard-earned empire, then she would show him no mercy. When Valerie returned to the hospital room the next morning, she had the family's corporate attorney in tow. They found Walter back in his bed, pale and withered as he had been, playing up his death's door routine for all it was worth. "Ah, my darling angel," Walter said in a weak, rasping voice as Valerie pulled up a chair next to the bed. "And I see you've brought Mr. Shapiro from legal to get the paperwork ready. How utterly thoughtful of you both." "Indeed," Valerie replied coldly, her expression an icy mask of stoicism. She set a manila envelope down on Walter's bedside tray, sliding it across to him. "What a relief it will be to have everything settled before... Walter choked up, feigning emotion as he trailed off. "If only I could see my final wish of being laid to rest in that beautiful private cemetery fulfilled." "Don't worry. I'll make sure you get your final wish," Valerie said coolly. "Go ahead and open the envelope, dear husband." Walter greedily tore open the clasp, his bony hands trembling with unbridled avarice. He eagerly fished out the sheaf of papers inside and scanned the top page, only for his face to fall in stunned disbelief. These are divorce papers," he sputtered, the pallor of his face now becoming very real and pallid with shock. "You're leaving me? Kicking me out with nothing while I'm on my deathbed?" "Did you really think I wouldn't see through your pathetic little act?" Valerie sneered, leaning back in her chair as she crossed her legs haughtily. "I've got the whole sordid thing recorded for posterity. You, your little whore Marion, the whole beach getaway plan once I signed everything over to you." "Valerie, I can explain everything," Walter blubbered, panic flashing in his eyes. But Valerie was already reaching into her purse and pulling out her cell phone. With a few taps of perfectly manicured nails, Walter's cruel, gloating voice filled the room. "Once that dried-up prune signs her assets over, thinking it's her dearly departed husband's dying wish to get buried in that snobby cemetery, we're home free. As soon as I get those signatures, your new boy toy husband is going to fake his own death. Then we'll skedaddle to our private beach villa and live like the king and queen we are on her dime." The blood drained from Walter's face entirely as his own damning words poured from the speaker. He opened and closed his mouth uselessly like a gasping fish, desperately trying to concoct an excuse or denial. But Valerie simply stared at him in cold contempt until the recording finished. "Sign the papers and get out of my life for good, you miserable con man," she said evenly, sliding the pen from the envelope towards him. "Don't even think of trying to fight me on this, or I'll release that tape to the cops and make sure you get nailed with criminal fraud charges." Walter's shoulders slumped in total defeat. Saying nothing, he took the pen with a trembling hand and scribbled a shaky signature across the thick divorce papers. Valerie didn't even feel the slightest flicker of emotion as she watched her marriage get dissolved in the literal blink of an eye. She just silently stood, gathering the freshly signed papers before turning to the lawyer. "Make sure these get filed immediately, Mr. Shapiro," she said, her voice dripping with cold venom as she stared daggers at her soon-to-be ex-husband one last time. "As for you, I hope you and your little girlfriend have a lovely life together on the streets where you belong. Don't ever try coming near me or my company again, or I'll have you thrown in prison so fast it'll make your head spin." With that, she spun on her designer heel and marched from the room without a backwards glance. Her heart panged briefly with the loss of the life she thought she had, but the pang was quickly replaced by an overwhelming sense of freedom. The lying, cheating albatross around her neck was finally falling away. As Valerie's limo pulled up to Whispering Pines Memorial Gardens a few hours later, she felt an odd sense of tranquility and new beginnings wash over her, as if being here was ushering out the dark, troubled chapter of her marriage and beckoning a fresh start. She stepped out into the still afternoon heat, surveying the immaculately groomed landscape around her. Taking a deep, cleansing breath, she began winding her way along the labyrinthine paths as if drawn by an unseen force. Sure enough, she soon spotted the ragged form of Christine huddled against a marble crypt up ahead, looking utterly defeated and exhausted. As she drew closer, the heartbreaking sounds of the little girl's terrified whimpering reached her ears. Valerie quickened her pace into a jog, panic seizing her chest. "Christine! Christine!" she cried as she turned the corner, only to be met by a horrific sight. The young homeless girl was curled up in a trembling ball, her frail arms shielding her head as she took blow after blow from a grimy, barrel-chested man with a ruddy, drunken face. The reek of stale booze and cigarettes assaulted Valerie's nostrils as she raced up to the foul vagrant. "Hey! Get your filthy hands off of her right now!" she screamed, shoving the bum away from the whimpering child with all her might. The drunken man reeled backwards, squinting blearily at Valerie through bloodshot eyes. "Who the fuck are you, lady?" he slurred, steadying himself against a headstone. "This here's my no-good kid, and I'll beat some sense into her if I goddamn well please." "You miserable wretch!" Valerie spat, positioning herself protectively in front of the cowering Christine. "How dare you raise a hand against a child, you pathetic, cowardly animal! Get out of here right now before I call the police!" The bum narrowed his booze-addled eyes menacingly, seemingly contemplating taking a swing at this well-dressed fancy woman. But Valerie held her ground, back straight, and chin jutted out defiantly. After a tense moment, the drunk seemed to think better of it and turned to stumble away, muttering a string of curses under his foul breath. As soon as he was gone, Valerie whirled to kneel beside Christine's shuddering form. "Oh, sweetheart, oh my God," she whispered, tears springing to her eyes at the pathetic state of the girl. Trembling from head to toe, Christine had a blossoming black eye and split lip where her father's blows had landed. Streaks of grime and dried tear tracks coated her hollow cheeks. Gingerly, Valerie reached out and took Christine into her arms, cradling the frail child to her chest. At first the girl flinched and tried to pull away, her eyes wide with fright. But then something in Valerie's soft, soothing motions and words seemed to reach her. "Shh, shh, you poor thing," Valerie cooed, rocking Christine gently as she stroked her matted hair. "It's okay now. You're safe. That monster will never lay a hand on you again. I promise." Christine said nothing, but her frightened trembling slowly subsided as she melted into the comforting embrace. Tear after tear rolled down Valerie's cheeks, her heart utterly shattered by the realization that this sweet child had been suffering unspeakable horrors right under her nose. She thought of her own cold, privileged childhood, loveless, but at least free from abuse, and a new sense of purpose blossomed within her. "Come now, darling," she whispered once Christine had calmed. "You're coming home with me, and we'll get you all cleaned up. Then, if you'll have me, I'd be honored if you'd allow me to give you the loving home and family you've never had." Christine lifted her bruised, puffy face to search Valerie's eyes, as if struggling to comprehend the magnitude of what she was offering. A childhood free from drunken rages and panhandling in cemeteries just to survive. A real mother's love and chance at a real future. After what seemed like an eternity, the girl gave the tiniest tentative nod, and in that moment, it was as if a great spiritual burden had been lifted from Valerie's shoulders. Her marriage had dissolved into ashes that day, but from those ashes, the first warm lights of a brand new life's purpose had been born. Christine would go from homeless, abused urchin to Valerie's daughter in every sense of the word. She would raise this child right, providing every opportunity and all the unconditional love she herself had so craved growing up. And maybe, just maybe, that would help heal the last lingering wounds of Valerie's own heart. Gathering Christine into her arms like a precious gemstone, Valerie stood and carried the girl out through the meticulously groomed grounds of the Whispering Pines Cemetery. With each step, she felt lighter and more energized by the future stretching out before them both. Turning to cast one last glance over her shoulder, Valerie felt a sense of finality, seeing the ornate headstones and mausoleums slowly receding behind her. Her old life, with all its betrayals and crushed dreams, would soon be laid to rest here. But more importantly, it was the sacred ground where she had found her new reason to keep living, little Christine, her soon-to-be adopted daughter. A whole world of possibilities lay ahead for them both, and this time Valerie vowed to get her new family absolutely right.
Alright, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick? Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. All right, everyone's presentations are done. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me. There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! What's wrong? Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself, had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I obediently followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, "I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong." "Mike, what have you done?" Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. "I didn't do anything wrong." "You're still saying that? Look at him." Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. "I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract?" Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. "Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go." Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. "Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him." There's no way he was pushed aside. "Don't make things worse here." "He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he?" I don't remember that part." I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you've failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.